Okay, so I've got my embroidery machine ready to go, and I've already run a placement stitch. I did it in a little bit darker color so you can see it really well. But this placement stitch is on our stabilizer, our soft tearaway stabilizer, so that you can see where you need to put your fabric. This is our template or our die line. We're going to completely cover that die line with a piece of fabric. So your fabric needs to be a little bit bigger. This is a 5x7 hoop, but the pattern fits in a 4x4 hoop. So you can use a 5x5, a 5x5 or larger scrap of your Cuddle fabric. I'm using some Luxe Cuddle here. This is a gorgeous textured Luxe Cuddle. It's embossed, not printed. So all these variations are really just shadows from the texture in it. So let's put a piece of this on the machine and stitch us up a pumpkin. Okay, our fabric's tacked down. This design has a couple of little pieces of stitching that is just some texture, so let's run that real quick. And let's watch the texture that this provides to the Luxe Cuddle. Look at those textured ridges that the embroidery gave to the Cuddle fabric. So it really looks like a pumpkin now. Now we're going to add a little placement stitch so that we know where to put our hardware. Okay, now I've got a D-ring lobster clasp on a little piece of fold over elastic. There's a tutorial in the pattern that tells you all the things you need to know about that. But I'm simply putting it right there over that placement stitch. And so we're gonna tack that down right now. We just wanna make sure that this metal piece doesn't get anywhere near the embroidery foot or the needle as it goes down. Okay, we're ready to cover this piece of embroidery up with the back piece. We're gonna lay a back piece of fabric right sides down on top of this, and then we're going to stitch the last step. Okay, we're stitching the final stitch for our pumpkin. I'm making sure that that little piece of hardware is nowhere near where the needle's going to go around, because we do not want our needle to hit that. If you need to, you can put a piece of tape to secure it to the center of your embroidery. And you can see where I cut away some of the fabric, and now I've got a little bit of Cuddle dust. That's okay, no big deal. We are all done stitching, and I I can cut this out of the hoop now. Okay, I want to show you one thing I did here. So some people don't like to trim out around the edges. And so what I just simply did in order to make the edges curve nicely when it's turned right side out, I put little notches right inside the fabric. So I'm simply going to turn this whole thing without trimming off any of the edging off after I get the rest of the stabilizer pulled out of the back. But I just wanted you to see that little tip because that makes it so easy. And then I'm going to tuck those scraps back in there anyway. I would tuck them back in if I cut them off. So I'm just not going to cut them off, save myself some cuddle dust, and just tuck the whole thing right side in. But don't tuck it in until you've made those little notches so that your fabric can turn correctly. Okay, let's turn our fluffy puff right side out. Da, da, da. You can reach into the opening and kind of find the tab and then just simply use that to help you gently pull the right side out. Look how cute that is. Okay, now I've got a tiny little stuffy. I didn't have to worry about stitching anything into a perfect circle at all because my embroidery machine did it for me. And I have a little placement line where the machine tacked down the fabric, and then that gives me a really great stitching line to close it up. Now because I notched the fabric, this turns outside, right side out perfectly. And so the only thing that I need to do is to fluff out the seams with my stiletto. So sometimes, no matter if you're using an embroidery machine or a sewing machine, some of this fluff will get caught in the seam, and you can simply use a stiletto to fluff that out, and it looks almost seamless once you start fluffing. And not a lot of fiber. Sometimes, you know, more gets caught than the others. It just depends on the texture of the cuddle that you're using, but it's easy to pick it out with a stiletto, and it's kind of fun too. So now our fluffy puff is all done. This one's actually not completely done though, because I need to stuff it with some polyfill. You can see those textured lines that the embroidery machine added onto it. And then I've got some little leaves. I might put one, I might put two on it, but I'm going to hand sew these on. I did these on my embroidery machine as well, but I think the pumpkin needs a little leaf to be extra cute. But then my little pumpkin bag charm is ready to be worn. Maybe I'll put 2 leaves on the back and 1 on the front. What do you think? There's pumpkins always, you know, the little pumpkins in their viney little places where they grow. Maybe just 1 pumpkin leaf is enough, but I'm going to attach that on here because I think it'll be super cute. Okay, I've got some silky polyfill, and not a lot. It doesn't need a lot. You can stuff these fluffy puffs as thick or as soft as you'd like. I'm just putting a little bit extra in here. You know, we had that extra edging for the fluffy puff, and you could simply leave it at that if you'd like. But I've got some polyfill, so I'm just going to stuff him. This is the silky kind, and there's not a lot of room here, so you might want to use a tool or, you know, just kind of stuff it in. Go gently. You don't want to rip that opening up so that you have more to hand stitch. So we're saving our hand stitching time. Okay, I'm going to put a piece of heat away topper on top of my fluffy puff. This one's a jack-o'-lantern, so it's got a little face on top of the pumpkin lines of stitching. I'm going to put this topper on right on top of it, and that's going to let the stitches sit on top of the nap instead of sinking in. There's not any knockdown stitches behind the face stitching, so we're just going to let that topper help us a little bit. I'll show you when we're done. Okay, check that out. Our stitching is done right here for the pumpkin face, and you can see how this heat away topper just kept those stitches from sinking into the fluff. When you're done, you can simply pull the topper away. Got some jump threads that I need to trim, but this stuff is great, and I could use a little bit of heat, you know, to get rid of that, but it's no big deal at all. It just lets the stitches sit right on top of that so nicely. After we're all done, I'll get my tweezers and I'll pick out those other pieces, but so far so good. What's going to happen now is it's going to run a little placement stitch for the top, and that's going to tell me where to put my tab and my loop for the hardware. So I've got a little piece of fold over elastic right here, and I'm simply going to put my hardware through my loop of elastic through the hardware, and then I'm going to lay it over that placement stitch that was just made, and making sure that the presser foot is not going to hit that little clasp, I'm gonna make sure that I can just catch that with the embroidery machine. And so this hanging in when the right side, when we flip it over to the right side, it's going to, that tab will be hanging out on the outside. All right, all I need to do now is cover this with the back piece of fabric, and then I can take our fluffy puff off the hoop. Okay, we're stitching the last step here, which is the finishing stitch, which is going to go all the way around, make another circle, just like the placement circle did, although this is a super sturdy beam stitch to hold it all down. If you need to, just kind of, it's knit fabric, so you can kind of pull it out of the way a little bit. I just folded this over because I'm using a larger chunk of fabric, so it's just folded over, and we are just about done. Now I'm going to take it off of the machine. I'll remove all the stabilizer. This tears off super easily, but I'm going to tear as much stabilizer as I can get off. And then I'll put some notches in this fabric and kind of roughly cut it out. The notches are going to help it turn right side out without having to get super close to the stitching. We don't really want to cut up to the stitching line. This is a knit fabric, and a knit fabric can unravel. I do want to give it some notches though, so that it can curve nicely when I turn it right side out. But I'll do that all off camera, and then I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done, when we're ready to turn it right side out. Okay, I've got my stabilizer removed from the hoop. This is the back side. This is the front side of the stuffing. You can see I kind of roughly cut all the way around, and I'm simply going to pull the stabilizer away. Remember, when you're choosing stabilizer, to choose something that's nice and soft. You can even hear this doesn't even sound super crunchy. It's just really soft. I'm going to pick as much as I can of this stabilizer off. It's so soft, it's not going to make a difference. If your stabilizer is more firm or it has more of a crunch to it, then you definitely want to get as much of that off, because you don't want a fluffy puff to crunch when you squeeze him. He's supposed to be fluffy, not crunchy. It's not a crunchy puff, it's a fluffy puff. So just remove all of that stabilizer that you can, and then when you're ready, when you've got as much off as you needed, this little opening, you can simply turn the stuffy right side out. If you need to, you can make some notches. So I'm just taking my cutting blade and I'm just kind of notching around the curve. I'm not getting over to the stitching at all, because I'm going close but not at it, because I don't want to snip any of the stitches. That'll be more places that I have to hand sew later, and I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to give these notches so that the fabric has the opportunity to turn nicely. It's a circle, and it wants to act like a circle, and so it needs some notches so that it can be a circle. Okay, we are all notched up. I'm going to reach into that opening. I'm going to find the little tab that we added, there he is, and I'm going to turn this guy right side out. Here he comes. This is the most exciting part. Here he is. Oh, I see his little face. It's always so fun when one of these is finally turned right side out. This is him. This is our little jack-o'-lantern. Now I can put some stuffing in him and sew his little opening up, but now you have a super cute little puff that you can hang on your purse or your backpack. That's a fluffy puff jack-o'-lantern for you. Happy Summerween.